the word path is one that gets trotted out a lot in spiritual work.
Mm.
And in choosing the koan for our conversation today, you chose the word paths in the plural. And I wonder what that does for you and how you might describe your own paths as plural.
You know, I think you're right that the word path gets thrown around a lot, and I think that I have a hard time with it because I relate to it and I don't. I am very resistant to the notion that everyone or anyone is on a particular path, and that everything that happens, in your life is somehow this kind of like teleological path that you're walking. I don't like that for reasons that I can't always articulate. But I think the thing about paths, I think there's something about that that's true. And I guess in my own life, it's that I have done a lot of different things. And sometimes they feel related to a greater thing, and sometimes they feel like they were their own thing, and they certainly were. They certainly were coherent as a period of time and a set of experiences that are related, and so in that way they feel like paths. But there's something about I guess the plural of paths that feels more accurate, but then also feels more I'm trying to find the right word because I don't like to say the word true either.
That seems connected.
Yeah. But there's something about it that feels yeah, that I'm just going to say it. It just feels more true.
Well, one thing that immediately occurred to me in thinking about the singular path as a fraught construct, as you described it as teleological. I think that in the metaphor of the path, that would be about a destination,
right?
Like a singular place you end up going,
right?
So are paths more zigzag? Is it more just about going from A to B and from B to W and not about direction?
Yeah, I think that's it. And that I think that it's okay. Well, and maybe that's it. It's that is that a path doesn't necessarily have to lead anywhere in particular to be valuable, and that even value is something that I just have a hard time kind of accepting or even relating to the notion that whatever it is that we're doing here is meant to lead somewhere, or is supposed to make us feel good or or anything like that. And I think that that's, I don't know, it's a hard place to be, because I understand wanting to feel like that one's life has meaning. And I guess for me, meaning and purpose are different.
What is the preferred metaphor of locomotion that you would use to describe the path? Because I think that as much as the word path might be thrown around, the word walking, the verb to walk, would be probably the typical one associated with it. And does that sit right with you? And does that connect with sort of the purpose of going?
Yeah, I think walking makes a lot of sense. I think about when I was younger. I don't do it as much as I would like to now, but I think that was something that I did quite a lot when I was a kid, and even through like high school and college. I would just kind of go wandering around, and maybe that is what I like more. Is that you just kind of head out.
Yes.
And you see what you see, and sometimes you head out and it's not like, oh, I went out and I went for this walk and I saw the most amazing thing. Sometimes that happens, but sometimes like you went for a walk and nothing really happened, and like I got chased by a dog, and like I'm tired and I wish that I had not gone walking, like and I guess that's the thing, is like that is also, that's fine. That's not it is value neutral. It's what happened. And I think that maybe that is a thing about paths that I like, is it just sort of acknowledges that like things happen, and maybe the most that you can do for any of it is just to pay attention to what is happening, and worry less about where it is that you are headed. I mean, at the same time, if you would like to head in a particular direction, I'd say go for it. I just don't think that, but I think that maybe both of those things are valid. Like, it's like, if you want to head off in a particular direction to go see or attain or whatever, a particular thing, I mean, fine. And if you don't, also fine. And that whatever you choose, you don't really choose where you end up.
Mm-hmm. That hits really deeply for me as like central to magical practice in my life, going from just heading out and seeing what happens. I feel like I learned a lot of my divinatory instincts that way. And it's related to the thing you were just saying about, if you want to go in a particular direction, fine. Like, just heading out is sort of the first impulse, and then the inclination to turn right instead of left at a particular intersection comes in from somewhere, and I either follow it or don't. And that sort of thing reminds me of things that happen in like much more like controlled devotional, ritual, magical environments too. Like, you just learn to receive signals from outside and interpret them. And going out for a walk is like, what better way to just be bombarded with signals?
Yeah. I guess maybe what I'm getting at here, and it feels related to this thing of magical practice, and it's a thing that I think people say is kind of important in kind of like spell work or whatever. It's this thing of detaching from outcomes, and also, accepting what's in front of you, listening to the nudges that are nudging you in whatever direction, and understanding that the nudge could be taking you down a dead end, and that you will have to walk all the way back, and that didn't happen for a reason. It's what happened, and perhaps you get something from it, perhaps you don't. I guess I'm sorry, I feel like I'm going around in circles, but it feels...
No, you're demonstrating exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for just kind of heading out and doing your best. And maybe if there's anything that there is to be taken from it, or if there is a reason for doing it, I think that perhaps it is this thing of, every everything is a part of it, right? Like everything that is happening is what is happening to you or around you or whatever. Everything that you see and everything that you smell and every stick that you break and you know, it's the most important things and the least important things. Like nothing is not a part of whatever is going on, and ultimately everything is in some way divinity actualizing. And if there's any job that you have, I think it's just to be in it and to pay attention to it. And that does not mean enjoy it all of the time. Like, you know, having your heart broken is still God, and it sucks. And you don't have to like convince yourself that like it's actually really good and is actually setting you up for some other, well, you know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. But it's what's happening, and you can be upset about that. You can be angry about that. It's okay to be mad at God sometimes.
I wanted to ask you about how walking and thinking are connected for you, because I think that that's a different angle on why one heads out that I think is also still deeply what you were just talking about you know, your relationship to your circumstances and how it is for you and how it lands for you and whether it's good or bad or you like it or don't. I feel like walks are, for me, necessary places to process that sort of thing and ruminate on it and wonder about it and maybe just kind of work it out.
Yeah, there's something about that, huh? There is something about walking that is different from like riding a bike or like lifting weights or whatever it is. Like I think that there is something about like, you know, getting physical that helps to process or whatever. But I think that there is something in particular about walking. And I don't really know what it is, but there's something about it that feels particularly useful for that bit of processing. And I think sometimes it helps me to think, but I think that for me, it's mostly, I don't know. It's just like the wrinkles kind of begin to iron themselves out without my needing to think about it too much. I think that maybe it is a thing of just being able to. It's like it requires enough attention that you can kind of put your attention outside of yourself, but not so much that you can't also kind of like monitor your internal state. I don't know. There's a weird kind of equilibrium thing that happens with walking. I find that when my wife and I are arguing that if we go for a walk and talk about it, it's a lot better than talking about it at home. We just end up kind of arguing about it at home. But if we go and walk around, we'll argue while we're walking around, but there's something that feels like productive when we do it while we're walking.
That's beautiful. And I am tempted to go down it as a rabbit hole or path, but I'm also being given a very kind of strange reference to the concept of sect and walking, which is to say daytime walking and nighttime walking, very different kind of processing to me.
Ooh, yeah.
Do you think that bringing in maybe like some of the astrological associations with day and night can elaborate anything about going for a walk in the senses we've been talking about it?
Maybe walking is that solar lunar thing. Like the moon is the walking, the moon is the locomotion, the moon is the body, and then the sun is the thinking. And there's something about locomotion that aids in some sort of clarity. I remember once when I was like 14 or 15, a buddy of mine and I had gone off into the woods walking, and we were pretty sure we knew where we were going. And when we head out, even though these were pretty deep woods, there's a fair amount of light that was coming through. But then we were trying to find our way out, and the sun started to go down, and it went from being something that was a kind of fun adventure to being kind of terrifying. And I remember in particularly that the forest had turned kind of this kind of deep dark red, and there was this big black snake coiled up that I almost stepped on, but then ended up stepping over. And it's something I think about maybe every time I go for a walk. That image has really stuck with me. So I think maybe it speaks to that kind of the body is like inherently, how do you say that word? Chthonic?
That's as close as I could come, I think.
Okay, good. It's inherently material, and so then it's inherently of the earth, and will kind of eventually decay. And perhaps there's something about walking that puts you in touch with your mortality in a light and approachable way. And maybe that allows you to process some things. You gotta grind the machine a little bit, and then you churn out something.
The grinding of the machine is a pretty sometimes celestial symbol or metaphor for me. Just the grinding of the orbits in the heavens. And that's sort of related to why I was thinking about day and night, because I also think about going out for a walk as like stepping out under the sky. And in the daytime, there's just the sun and its path. And then at night, there's the whole road of the heavens and watching it grind. And I always sort of feel the earth in deep spatial relationship to the sky when I'm walking, as I'm like going up and down hills and what have you, and around corners and looking out over the vistas and sort of seeing where I'm at on this planet. And I think one of the things that helps me about that is just sort of the relatedness between me and these other bodies and places, as opposed to just being up in my own stuff at home. I'm wondering if that also to you has something to do with why it helps to have a conversation with your wife on a walk as opposed to at home.
Maybe. There's something when you mention this thing of the churning of the heavens. What it reminds me is that the planets are also on paths that aren't necessarily going anywhere. And maybe that is why I relate to them. I don't know. There's something there about kind of, and maybe that is the thing about walking and about paths, and about their kind of purposeful aimlessness or aimless purposefulness is that there's something about going around in circles that feels baked into the nature of the universe.